A human can survive about 21 days without food, but without water, you're dead in 3 days. Your body is a leaking bag of fluid. Every time you exhale, you lose moisture. Every time you sweat, you're draining the tank. Even just digesting your food pulls water out of your system. We're incredibly needy creatures. A camel can endure massive dehydration without its blood thickening, but a human, we just sweat and die. For our ancient ancestors, this biological countdown was the loudest ticking clock in the world. Water access was the single absolute boundary dictating where early humans could live and move. If we go back roughly 1.8 million years to East Africa's Rift Valley, the situation was brutal. The climate there wasn't stable. It swung back and forth like a metronome. Earth's orbit drove 23,000-year climate cycles, steered by the African monsoon. During the wet phases, the landscape was green and forgiving, but during the dry periods, the surface water simply vanished. Rivers turned into winding ribbons of cracked mud. Lakes evaporated into toxic, salty sludge. If you were a hominin living in the Olduvai Basin in modern-day Tanzania, you couldn't just walk down to the river to get a drink. There was no river. The obvious guess is they migrated to follow the rain. Walking across a desert takes water you don't have. Water was hiding deep underground. Rainwater from wetter decades had seeped into massive, deep aquifers. This trapped water would slowly bleed out onto the surface as small springs. They were often just a quiet trickle of muddy water welling up from the dirt. They were incredibly persistent. A single groundwater spring in the Olduvai Basin could stay active for up to 1,000 years without a single drop of rain falling from the sky. These tiny islands of survival in a dead landscape acted as groundwater refugia. Every animal in the savanna knew where the water was. Lions and rival groups of hominins all crowded around these tiny springs. Getting a drink meant risking your life. It was a site of intense, daily competition. You can't see groundwater. It doesn't form a shiny lake you can spot from a mountaintop. It doesn't carve a massive canyon you can follow for miles. To find a spring, you had to know it was there. You had to build a mental map. You had to remember its exact location across miles of identical-looking rocks and dry brush. And you had to remember it even if you hadn't visited that specific spring in years. It required a massive leap in spatial memory. You had to hold the entire landscape in your mind at once. Fast forward a few 100,000 years, and humans got much better at solving this. We settled permanently next to massive rivers. We figured out how to harvest rainwater in fired clay pots. And then, around 8,500 years ago on the island of Cyprus, people did something unprecedented. They dug the very first permanent wells. They used stone tools to literally hack their way down to the water table. They went down to get it. Later humans got incredibly good at reading the landscape. They learned to look for specific deep-rooted plants that only grow above aquifers. They even watched where morning mist clung to the ground longest before the sun burned it away. They learned to read the invisible shape of the water beneath them. But go back to those brutal dry cycles in the Rift Valley. Water scarcity was a filter. It likely changed the shape of our brains. The selective pressure of the savanna was ruthless. Hominins who had the mobility to travel long distances and the cognitive ability to remember exactly where the springs were, they survived. The ones who couldn't remember didn't. A dry river made you.